I received the invitation on a Wednesday afternoon, a thick, heavy envelope embossed with gold patterns on a navy blue background. It looked more like an invitation to a royal wedding than a family reunion. But what stunned me wasn't its flashy appearance. It was the name printed on the sender line, the Worthington family. You're invited to the annual reunion at Sapphire Hills Resort, Colorado. A laugh slipped from my throat, not from joy, but from bitterness. I, Savannah Worthington, the daughter cast aside for daring to live differently, for choosing struggle before success, had just received an invitation to an event they once swore I'd never be welcome at. I placed the card down on the granite countertop of my small Seattle apartment, staring at it like it was a glittering mask. Shiny, polished, but hollow inside. Not even 2 minutes later my phone buzzed. It was Callie, my cousin and once best friend, back when we used to ride bikes around Fairview Park as kids. She hadn't called in years. But now she did. Right when the invite landed. "Savannah?" Callie's voice came through the speaker, so sugary sweet it immediately put me on guard. "You got the invite, didn't you?" I nodded slightly, even though she couldn't see me. "Yeah, it looks grand. Right? This year's extra special. Sapphire Hills is the most luxurious resort in the Rockies. They've got a Michelin-starred chef and a world-class spa. The family's really pulling out all the stops." I said nothing. I waited for what I knew was coming. And it did. Callie hesitated, her tone softening. "But I think you get it, Savannah. Not everyone really fits that kind of space. I mean, people like you, running those little hostels in the city. You might feel out of place." "People like me?" I asked, my voice low but sharp. "That's not what I meant," she rushed. "It's just, there'll be a lot of special guests this time. State senators, a few Silicon Valley CEOs, and, well, you know, our family cares a lot about image." Silence. Inside, I felt a mix of anger, contempt, and a little sadness. But no more pain. I looked around my apartment. Not lavish but warm. On my desk sat blueprints for the next phase of urban leaf hostels, the sustainable lodging chain I'd built from scratch over the past 7 years. A network now praised by backpackers and students across the West Coast. But to the Worthingtons, I was still just the odd one who dropped out of an MBA to become a receptionist at some backpacker inn. "Who picked Sapphire Hills anyway?" I asked, though I already knew. "Madison, of course," Callie replied proudly. She said it took her 3 months to get the resort director to confirm the booking. "Everyone's impressed with her planning and vision." I smirked. Oh, the irony. I, the one who secured the contract to supply all furniture and digital service systems to Sapphire Hills, was now being subtly excluded from the very place I helped shape. All because I didn't wear the labels they deemed worthy. "Savannah, I hope you're not too upset. Maybe next time if things work out, who knows?" Callie said, trying to end the call gently. "Yeah, who knows," I replied. "Maybe next year things will be very different." I hung up without waiting for goodbye. Outside my window, light rain began to fall over the rooftops of Fremont, the neighborhood I chose not because I was poor, but because I loved the freedom it offered. I poured myself a cup of hot ginger tea and placed it next to my laptop. Beside it sat an unsent email, a service renewal contract between Everline Design Studio, one of my investments, and Sapphire Hills Resort. I smiled, cold and steady. They thought I wasn't high class enough? Fine. They were about to see exactly what real class looked like. When it wasn't handed down through golf course mansions or engraved business cards, but built from every insult turned into leverage. I still remembered that first night home from graduation. While my friends buzzed with internship plans at Fortune 500 companies, I quietly packed my things and left the University of Oregon with a degree in hospitality management that my father once called a lifelong poverty certificate. The whole family had gathered in my grandparents' Denver estate, a stately old mansion every Worthington silently viewed as a badge of honor. My father, Richard Worthington, sat at the center like a self-crowned king. My mother, Eloise, poured tea with the air of an aristocratic matriarch trapped in a dull stage play. "You're going to join Everlyn Group, right?" my father asked, his voice booming like a command dressed up as a question. Everlyn Group, his real estate investment firm, where every child and grandchild was expected to join to be seen as a valuable member. I looked up, met his gaze, and said plainly, "I turned it down. I want to start in hospitality. I've applied to a hostel chain in Portland." The room froze for a second. "What?" His voice ricocheted off the walls. "You're going to clean up after tourists instead of managing a $300 million property portfolio?" I didn't respond. There was no answer that would satisfy him anyway. My mother sighed, her eyes cutting through me. Not with disappointment, but embarrassment. "Savannah, you're a Worthington. No one with our name wears a name tag behind a front desk." I stood up, my heart pounding but my voice steady. "Good, because I plan to wear one. I'll wear it until I know every brick and paycheck of this industry. And then, I'll build something none of you ever dared to dream of." I left that house carrying not shame, but a fire that never went out. They didn't want me to have dreams. They wanted a quiet replica of themselves. Someone who smiled on cue at dinner parties. My first year in Portland was a long stretch of sweat and tears. I worked night shifts as a front desk clerk at a tiny hotel near the Pearl District. By day, I took courses in lodging design and guest behavior analysis. At night, I dealt with drunk guests, broken A/Cs, and the graveyard shifts no one wanted. Once, I was asked to clean an entire third-floor hallway after someone spilled red wine from the elevator to their room. A coworker looked at me, shrugged, and said, "Not your job, Savannah. Your front desk." I just smiled and grabbed the mop, because every drop I wiped up was a lesson in hotel operations no textbook could teach. By my second winter, I was night manager at a rundown place called Riverview Lodge. The owner, Marty, a black man in his 50s and a former regional manager for Marriott, was the first person to tell me, "You've got vision, but to build it, you gotta wade through the mud. I won't teach you from books, I'll let you fall, and then you'll get back up." And fall I did, many times. I was once threatened by a guest with calling the police because I refused to upgrade their room for free. I once witnessed a junior employee stealing cash and had to report it to the police. I once had to use my personal credit card to pay for a batch of linens when the supplier delivered the wrong order, just to avoid disrupting the guest experience during the holiday season. And every time something like that happened, it only made me more certain. If I wanted to change the hospitality industry, I had to start from the bottom. 3 years later, I opened my first hotel, a renovated old 3-story house in the Fremont neighborhood of Seattle. I named it the Pine's Nest. A nest among the pine trees. No luxury signs. No $1,000 cocktail bar. But every pillow there, every breakfast I personally made, carried one promise. Here, everyone is treated with respect. The first reviews came slowly, but then they spread. Young travelers, professors, backpacking couples. They didn't need red carpets. They needed to feel heard. I opened a second branch in Capitol Hill, then a third, in Tacoma. Then I teamed up with 2 old friends to found Urban Leaf Hospitality, a booking platform that connects guests with authentic local experiences. But throughout those years, my family never once asked how I was doing. To them, I was still just the girl working at a 3-star motel, and they kept sending invites to weddings, funerals, or family gatherings, without even putting my name on them. But honestly, I didn't need them to remember me. I just needed them to witness it. And this time, I had prepared a stage. Not to be applauded, but so they'd have to bow. Not to me, but to the choice they once called a mistake. I had slept in the damp basement of my own hotel. A rundown building in Spokane that most real estate agents didn't even want to mention. But it was there, in room 3, with a leaky toilet and flickering hallway lights, that everything began. It was called the Orchard Inn. Sounds poetic, but it had once been a roadside lodge abandoned for nearly 5 years. I bought it for $82,000. Every penny I had, plus an unsecured loan I signed under the risk of losing everything if I failed. Everyone around me thought I was crazy, and honestly, sometimes I did too. But I knew if I didn't start there, I would never start at all. I didn't hire an architect. Had no marketing team. I learned logo design on YouTube, wrote the website copy myself, and painted every wall with a discounted brush. By day I drove around the city sourcing used furniture. By night, I assembled each nightstand, screwed in every coat hook by hand. Instead of running Facebook ads like everyone else, I handwrote letters to local travel bloggers, offering them a free night and a homemade breakfast if they'd share their experience. 3 accepted. One of them, Claire, a woman in her 40s with a blog focused on small lodgings, wrote a piece I still keep today. A place with a real heart. Simple, rustic, but every detail makes you feel like you've come home. 3 months later, the Orchard Inn was fully booked every weekend. Guests returned, bringing friends. I used the saved profits to slowly renovate the rooms. Starting with the first floor, then gradually working up to the second. I didn't open another hotel right away. Instead, I turned that very place into a concept lab. Testing self-check-in tablets, using recycled materials for decor, creating a minimal touch maximum connection experience for Gen Z and millennial guests. After 2 years, I raised my first round of funding, just $300,000 from 3 angel investors who had once stayed at the Orchard Inn. With that, I purchased a lakeside lodge in Idaho, named it Fern Shore, and launched my second branch. And so, step by step, not flashy, not loud, but steady, I expanded. Washington, Oregon, Colorado. When I reached my 10th hotel, I officially founded SVA Hospitality. Named after the very name they once mocked, Savannah Victoria Aldridge. Only then did I begin hiring a professional marketing team, recruiting a CFO, and building a centralized quality management system. I didn't chase outdated luxury standards. I created a new one. Luxury through intention. Where luxury didn't come from crystal chandeliers or $500 wine glasses, but from sincerity, refinement, and quiet efficiency. When I opened my 17th hotel, the Juniper Vale in Aspen, Modern Retreats magazine called me the woman redefining luxury for the next generation. As for me, I still personally inspect the bedsheets and walk barefoot through every new room to feel the floor's cleanliness. I remember clearly an investor meeting in Manhattan where a venture fund director asked me, "Why not go the traditional hotel chain route? Less investment, faster profits, easier to sell." I looked him in the eye. Because I don't build to sell, I build to outlast the Forbes list you're chasing. Last year I turned 33. By that point, SVA Hospitality owned 21 resorts across 4 countries: the United States, Canada, New Zealand and Sweden. Each location had its own character, but upheld the same values: warmth, simplicity, elegance and sustainability. The crown jewel among them is Azure Summit, a resort perched on a hilltop overlooking Half Moon Bay, California. It's my personal reminder. Every brick here was paid for with the insults I once swallowed. And when Sapphire Hills, where my family is now hosting their reunion, needed a partner to overhaul its operations system, they didn't know the company that won the bid was SVA Tech, my subsidiary. When Callie bragged that Madison had to call the executive director just to secure a reservation, I laughed. Not from humor but from irony. She had no idea that the executive director personally approved her request, with a 35% rate markup, plus an added fee for premium personalization services. Which I approved myself. Yes, I was once seen as a burden, the leftover shadow of the Worthington family. But now, they're hosting their event on the red carpet I laid. And they have no idea that Savannah they once cast out has turned her name into a brand that's making the entire hospitality industry take notice. 3 days after Callie's oh-so-subtle phone call, I received an email from Sapphire Hills VIP booking department. It looked ordinary enough: confirmation of a group reservation under the Worthington Family Reunion. Approved at a special rate with custom requests. I smiled. Not because the event was happening there, but because I was the one who approved it. With the name S.V. Aldridge signed on the executive authorization line, my real name discreetly hidden beneath the complex web of SVA Hospitality's leadership. And of course the organizer, specifically Madison Worthington, my cousin, chairwoman of Family Tradition Coordination as she calls herself, was completely unaware. I still remember our conversation 8 years ago. Back when I was struggling to keep the second branch in Idaho afloat, she once messaged me on Facebook Messenger. "You should consider coming back to work for the family. Better than chasing after cheap motels." I never responded. And now, Madison had just posted a photo on social media, standing in front of the Sapphire Hills emblem with a caption. "A perfect choice for a perfect family. Thanks to the Sapphire Hills team for helping us uphold the Worthington standard." I saved the photo, not as a keepsake, but as a reminder of their delusion, before the truth comes to light. At the resort's command center, I called an internal meeting with all managers and department heads. I wanted control over every detail, from the lobby lighting to the signature hallway fragrance. "We cannot afford a single mistake during Worthington Week," I said, voice calm but firm. "They're my family. And they have no idea." All eyes turned to me, a flicker of surprise, then resolved. Marcus, my closest assistant, who's been with me since the first hotel in Seattle, nodded. "They don't know you're the owner?" "No. To them I'm still just Savannah, the cousin who dropped out of her MBA to clean hotel rooms." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "And now they're throwing a party on the stone flooring you selected, dining in the very room you designed?" I smiled, not hiding the bitterness in my tone. "Exactly. They'll walk into the world I created, believing it reflects their taste. They'll praise each other, pat themselves on the back, never realizing that every napkin, every glass of wine they raise was planned by me, down to the smallest detail. I don't need revenge in the old-fashioned way. I don't need to shout that I've succeeded. I just need them to fall right into the trap of pride they've built for themselves." On the day of the reunion, I didn't appear in the main lobby. Instead, I stood in the control room, behind the surveillance screens, watching their every move. My father's charcoal gray Bentley pulled up to the main entrance at 5:45 p.m. He stepped out from the back seat wearing a custom-tailored black suit, his face still carrying the same cold sternness that once made me lower my head as a child. Madison arrived afterward, wearing a red Carolina Herrera dress, holding a Chanel bag, her oversized sunglasses covering most of her face. She walked past the rows of hydrangeas I had specifically requested for the entrance, strutting like she owned the place. And then, like a perfectly timed scene in a play, she said loudly, "Good thing I called the executive director directly to secure this booking. Everyone wants Sapphire Hills in peak season. You know, not everyone has the kind of high-level connections I do." I heard every word through the surveillance speaker. A front desk staff member bowed and responded, "We're honored to host the Worthington family. All customization requests were approved by Mrs." She glanced down at the memo. "MSSV. Aldridge, our strategic director and current owner." Madison laughed, oblivious to the name. "Sounds fancy. That's how you know they're on top of things. People like that." She walked away, unaware that she was stepping across a hallway embedded with the initials SVV etched into the floor tiles. I looked at Marcus. He was smirking. "When are you planning to show up?" I lifted the glass of untouched Chardonnay, speaking softly. "When they think the evening is perfect. When their pride reaches its peak. That's when the curtain rises." Marcus nodded. He didn't ask anything else. I walked toward the elevator that led to the rooftop, where the LED setup was scheduled to light up at exactly 7:10 p.m. The large screen hanging in the central hall wouldn't display just the Sapphire Hills logo that night. It would change. And in that moment, every proud face raising a glass would freeze. Because I, Savannah Worthington, would be the one hosting the evening, and I wouldn't be appearing as an uninvited guest, but as the one throwing the entire event. I don't need to shout, I don't need to strike back with cruel words or cutting glares. For the Worthingtons, people who've only ever known how to bask in applause, the strongest blow is silence. The moment when an entire room goes still, realizing they're standing on a stage, written and directed by me. I started planning 3 weeks before the reunion. Every detail, from how the lights would softly graze the archways to the floral colors on the reception tables, was personally approved by me. No intermediaries, no delegation. Direct control. I chose the lobby's signature scent to be fig and white amber, the one my mother once mocked as cheap like a low-end massage parlor. Yet it's the signature fragrance throughout my luxury hotel chain, beloved enough to be listed by Condé Nast Traveler in the top 10 signature scents in hospitality. That same scent would waft through Sapphire Hills that evening like a quiet laugh. They wouldn't recognize it consciously, but their subconscious would. And it would stir something oddly familiar, faintly uncomfortable. Like the memory of having looked down on someone, only to be pulled back into that reality. The menu? I entrusted that to Chef Anton, the Austrian chef I worked with in Zurich. The appetizer was a purple lemon tart, the same kind my grandmother once told me to learn to make so I'd at least have value in the kitchen. Now it was elevated with French butter and organic lavender essence, served on custom-blown Venetian glass plates. And then came the name cards. That's where I placed the knife. I had the design team print each Worthington family member's name on clear acrylic cards, but with no titles. No doctor, no CEO, no VP, or any of the honorifics they once wore like armor. Just first and last names, plain, unadorned. I wanted to see how they'd react when treated like ordinary people in a space they believed was their stage. Marcus asked me, "Are you sure no one's going to figure it out? Won't they recognize the signature SVA design?" I smiled. If they were ever going to notice, they would have already. But they're too busy looking at themselves to ever notice someone else. Especially someone they once called worthless. I even prepared a short film, a montage of the journey of SVA hospitality, from Orchard Inn to Azure Summit. Shot by drone, produced using high-end cinematography techniques, and set to orchestral music performed by a Viennese chamber symphony. The video would play at exactly 7:10 p.m., right after Madison's speech. The one where she fully believed she was the family's face for the evening. And, as the Sapphire Hills logo faded into SVA Hospitality, founded and owned by Savannah Victoria Aldridge, everything would come to a halt. I had even planned the retreat. Immediately after the video, the staff would move discreetly to the left wing, leaving the main hall clear as I stepped out through the west door, where the skylight would cast its glow directly onto the large sign behind me. "Welcome home, Savannah." No glitter, no arrogance, just one sentence. Enough to drown out all the arrogance they threw at me over the past 15 years. I told Marcus, "I don't want them to feel humiliated, I just want them to feel my presence, the choice they called a mistake and the worth they tried to deny." Marcus nodded, his eyes flickering with something between admiration and understanding. "So we're not throwing a reunion for them, but a farewell to how they used to treat you?" I turned away, speaking gently. "No, Marcus. I'm not saying goodbye to anyone. I'm just opening the door. Whether they walk through it, that's up to them. I don't need an apology, I don't need recognition. I've long stepped out of their shadow. But tonight, they will step into the light I built. And even if they don't recognize me at first, they won't be able to look away by the end." The clock struck 7:10 p.m. just as I had planned. The lights in the Sapphire Hills Grand Hall dimmed, the background music stopped, and the massive LED screen behind the stage began to shift. Madison, with the microphone still in her hand, mid-sentence about the Worthington family's refined taste and the connections that secured this prestigious venue, suddenly froze. The air turned still. Every eye moved from her to the screen. The Sapphire Hills logo appeared first. Elegant, classic, silver against a deep navy backdrop. Then it shifted to a large, stark white line of text that sliced through the darkness like a blade. SVA Hospitality Group founded and led by Savannah Victoria Aldridge. A heavy silence settled, stretching out as if the universe itself had stopped to hold its breath. The sound of a wineglass shattering on marble echoed across the room. Someone whispered, "No way." I stepped out from the west door, past the candlelit banquet tables. I wore a custom-tailored ash-gray suit, my hair pinned up neatly, heels clicking sharply against the floor. Each step striking like a hammer on the dusty past they had buried me in. Madison stared at me, eyes wide, mascara threatening to run. "Savannah!" she gasped, unable to believe the figure walking toward her. What are you doing here?" I stopped in the center of the hall, surrounded by stunned, angry, and shocked stares. I saw them. Each person who had once labeled me the ungrateful one, the family embarrassment, now seated on silk-covered chairs, in a room I had designed, eating food I had selected, and breathing in a scent they once called cheap. I spoke, quietly, but each word sliced through their illusions like a blade. "Good evening. I'm Savannah Victoria Aldridge, Chief Executive Officer and founder of SVA Hospitality, and the sole owner of Sapphire Hills Resort." Silence, as if the air had been vacuumed out of the room. Madison stammered. No way. "Would you like to see the ownership documents?" I asked, pulling a copy of the contract from my jacket pocket. "Or maybe just check the name on the executive office? On the 12th floor." My father stood. He was the only one not looking at me with hostility, but with eyes heavy with memory. As if, finally, he recognized that the daughter he once called a disappointment had become a woman he no longer had the right to command. You're the one behind all of this?" "I am," I said, meeting his gaze. "When you said you would never allow a Worthington to work in hospitality, I began learning how to own hotels instead of applying for jobs in them." Aunts, uncles, cousins around the room began whispering. A few pulled out their phones, searching the company name. Others just stared at one another, confused, red-faced. No one daring to speak. I turned to Madison, the one who had once intentionally seated me with the catering staff at her wedding, calling it Savannah's usual spot. "You said it took a powerful connection to secure this venue, didn't you?" Madison didn't reply, her face had gone pale. "Well, that connection was me." I gave a half smile. "And the 35% VIP service surcharge? You just paid that to me." From the back of the room, Marcus stepped forward. He handed each of them a navy envelope sealed with silver wax. Inside, a detailed invoice for the event, not cheap, and a brochure outlining the growth journey of SVA Hospitality. Madison opened her envelope, her eyes scanning the number. A choked sound escaped her lips. You charge this much? We're family." I lifted my head. My expression wasn't angry, it was cold. "Family? When was the last time you actually called me that? Or do you only remember I exist when you need someone to polish the backdrop of your public image?" I turned to my father. He looked at me for a long time. "I was wrong," he said. Not loudly, but his voice did not tremble. "About everything." I didn't respond immediately. In my mind flashed all the nights I spent in tiny rooms, scrubbing toilets, writing financial plans under the soft yellow glow of a desk lamp. Working, thinking. One day, they'll see. And today was that day. I looked at him, calm but firm. "You didn't believe in me, and that was the best thing you ever did. Because if you had, I wouldn't have needed to prove anything. And SVA wouldn't exist." The entire hall was still. Only the sound of tense breathing, the clink of utensils, and every pair of eyes fixed on me. I took a small step back, lifted my hand, like a host welcoming honored guests. Welcome to Sapphire Hills. Welcome to the world the daughter cast out by her own family. Built from the ashes you left behind. I paused for a moment after that last sentence. My eyes swept across the room. Every stunned face, every fidget in their chairs, every discomforted glance, as if they had wandered into a celebration where they were no longer the stars. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to cry. Their silence was the reward. I raised my hand. Marcus understood instantly and tapped the tablet screen. The massive LED display behind me faded to black, then lit up with the SVA Hospitality logo against a sky full of stars. One by one the images appeared, not with flashy effects, but through cinematic, seamless visuals. A snowy resort in Norway where golden light glowed from cozy wooden cabins. A floating hotel on turquoise waters in New Zealand where guests enjoyed breakfast overlooking the ocean. A hillside retreat in Kyoto, built entirely from recycled materials and certified carbon neutral. Beneath each frame was a small caption. Owned and operated by Savannah Victoria Aldridge. Then came the headquarters of SVA in San Francisco, an 18-story glass tower with a brilliant silver logo on its rooftop. The entire hall fell into stunned silence. From the left side, a murmur rose. Someone didn't whisper low enough. She's the CEO of all that? I turned around, my voice steady and clear. Yes, I don't work at a hotel. I own a hotel system. While everyone here was clinging to their fake prestige, I was laying the foundation for a global empire, without anyone in this room, without asking for a single dollar, without needing any of the high-level connections you all take so much pride in. Madison bowed her head. My mother, Eloise, sat frozen, her hand clenched tightly around her wineglass as if trying to crush it. I continued. I was mocked by this family for working at a front desk. Ridiculed for chasing idealistic dreams. Deleted from family photos. Removed from group chats for not being successful enough to contribute to the conversation. I looked directly at my father, Richard Worthington. The man who once told me, Savannah, if you don't study investment, don't expect a place in this family. You once said I had no future. And now? You're sitting in a resort I own. Drinking from glassware designed by my company, and eating from a menu I personally approved. He swallowed hard, his face tightening, but said nothing in return. I walked to the reception desk, where Marcus had prepared a small wooden box. I opened it and handed out envelopes to each family member. On the front, printed clearly, special invoice, Worthington family discount. I wasn't joking. I had actually included a 30% surcharge for personalized service and brand image maintenance. You think booking Sapphire Hills was about connections? No, it was about money. A lot of money. And you just paid it to me. Some people laughed, not out of amusement but because their discomfort had surpassed the threshold of tolerance. Camille, my cousin, the only one who ever secretly wrote to ask if I was okay during the years the family turned its back, sat near the corner table. Suddenly burst out laughing. This needs to be a movie, she said, trying to hold it in but failing. The royal family gets billed by Cinderella for their night of fake glory. I looked at her and smiled softly. Not because she was right, but because she dared to say what was right, in front of those who never knew how to listen. I returned to the center of the hall, glancing around once more. I didn't do this for revenge. I don't need approval from anyone in this room. But I want the truth placed where it belongs. I used to be the overlooked girl mopping floors, but today, I'm the only one here who doesn't need to pretend. I stepped back. The lights above shifted to a soft, warmer tone. My staff entered, politely inviting everyone to the evening banquet. But no one stood up immediately. My father was the first to break the long silence. Savannah, I have no excuses. But I need to ask. Why didn't you say anything before? I looked at him, candidly. Because when I had nothing, none of you would listen. And now that I have everything, I no longer need to explain. Some looked down. Others quietly folded the invoice, slipping it into their coat pockets. A souvenir of a costly lesson they'd never forget. I turned and walked toward the garden doors. The soft amber lights filtered through olive trees, the night air was cool. I said nothing more. I didn't need to. Because from now on, every time they mention that reunion, they'll remember. Savannah didn't fight for a seat at the family table, she built a house. And made them walk through a gate she designed. After the final speech, I didn't return to the hall right away. I stepped straight onto the rooftop balcony, where the night wind swept through my hair like a cleansing breeze. In the distance, the lights of Denver glittered, stretched out like a galaxy within reach. I had once seen this city from ground level, with scraped hands hauling luggage. Now, I looked down from the highest point I had built myself. A knock sounded behind me. I didn't need to turn to know who it was. My father. Richard Worthington. The man who once barred me from his boardroom for not being qualified. He stood there in a black suit, no longer looking powerful. His face was drawn, pale, and in his eyes lingered something I had never seen before. Confusion. Maybe shame. Possibly regret. "Savannah," he said hoarsely. "I need to talk." I didn't turn right away. I let him stand there for a few seconds, in the open air, where no throne could protect him from the loneliness. "I've heard enough, Dad, what else is there to say?" "I was wrong," he said slowly, each word falling like bricks from a crumbling wall. "I turned a blind eye to your efforts. I stayed silent when they mocked you, and worse. I let you face the world alone. Without a single word of recognition." I turned back. My eyes were dry, my anger long gone. I was just a woman now, standing before the man who once made her doubt herself. "Do you know what hurt me most? Not that you didn't believe I would succeed, but that you never cared why I was trying so hard." He bowed his head. A heavy silence draped over the rooftop. I stepped inside and pulled an envelope from the drawer. Inside was a list of 21 presidential suites at resorts I owned, from Aspen, New York, Palm Springs, all the way to Cape Cod. I handed it to him. "These are some of the most beautiful places I've built. Some are perched on snowy peaks. Some sit in the desert. Some are places where I cried from financial pressure and almost gave up. You may choose any one of them to stay in, for as long as you need." He looked at me surprised. "For what?" "To think. To decide if you truly want to start over. Not with the Savannah you once imagined, but with the woman standing here now. If the answer is yes, then the door is still open. But, this time, I won't be walking into your world. You'll have to enter mine." I didn't need him to beg. I didn't need tears or hollow promises. I needed action. And if he truly wanted redemption, then this was his last chance. To act with sincerity, not authority. My father took the envelope, nodded slightly. He said nothing more, turned away. His shoulders slouched, his steps no longer firm. The door closed behind him in an unfamiliar silence. I returned to the balcony. Below, Sapphire Hills still glowed brightly. My family members now wandered the illuminated garden, some murmuring among themselves, others trying not to show their discomfort. I knew the event tonight would be remembered at future reunions as a milestone, but not as an elegant evening at a luxury resort. It would be remembered as the night the illusions were stripped away. The night Savannah, the girl once erased from family photos for cleaning rooms, stood tall in the very world that once shut her out, and opened a new gate, brighter, straighter, for herself. My phone buzzed, a message from Marcus. "I've finished the final report. Everyone received their invoice and they're doing some self-reflection. A few asked to follow up later. They're afraid, but won't admit it." How should I respond? I typed back. "Let them wait. I'm not on standby anymore." A strong gust of wind swept through, carrying the scent of pine and the warm notes of incense from the hotel. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath. My heart no longer trembled. For the first time in years, I felt whole. Not because I had defeated them, but because I no longer needed them. I stood there, at the highest point of the empire I had built with faith and flesh. Not to look down on them, but to look forward. Beyond the darkness of the night, a new chapter was opening. And this time, I was the one writing every line. Savannah's story is a powerful reminder that being underestimated can become fuel, and that those once pushed aside can build a world where they never have to be excluded again. From a girl dismissed by her family for choosing to clean hotel rooms, Savannah quietly built a global hospitality empire. Recognition didn't come from praise, but from forcing others to face an undeniable legacy. And sometimes forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's setting conditions, then moving forward. What do you think of Savannah's journey? Would you have forgiven like she did, or chosen a different path? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to follow the channel so you don't miss more emotional, surprising, and thought-provoking family stories to come.